What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. We are here as we are every Monday, where we start to recap all of these Sunday games that happened. Pretty long day for fantasy football purposes, as it is with these London games. You know, we got to wake up early. We hit the live stream. We got games all day long. It is a full event, but lots of stuff to talk about. I see we got people in the chat already. Element, my guy, he said, I promised I was going to be here. And he's here, so you love to see it. You absolutely love to see it. But lots of stuff to talk about here today. As always, I will mention this is a little bit chill, a little bit laid back. We are just going to go through the games, talk about who won, who performed, who didn't perform, some takeaways for fantasy football, and really just get through the whole slate. So we got a lot to talk about, not a lot of time. Hopefully going to get this done within an hour, and then we will be in on to the next thing, I guess, which is recording the waiver video for tomorrow morning. So what's up, Element, man? Appreciate you being here. That said, folks, let's get into the first game. The first game that I have on the schedule is the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Chicago Bears. This game was the London game here, so Chicago ends up coming away with this one 35-16. The Jaguars, they dropped to 1-5. Chicago is now 4-2 with Caleb Williams at the quarterback position. Big takeaway really was the day of Caleb Williams. I think at this moment he is the QB1 here in week 6 based off of his production. He goes 23 for 29, 226 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, an interception in there that he underthrew a little bit to DJ Moore, 124.4 passer rating. Overall, a great day from Caleb Williams. He is looking the part. I know Jaden Daniels is, one of the guys that everybody's talking about rookie of the year, Jaden Daniels. And Jaden has looked fantastic, but Caleb Williams, he looks the part too, man. I think we got some really good rookie quarterbacks here in 2024 that have come in and now have kind of stapled themselves as franchise quarterbacks. Element says, can we skip the Cowboys? Hopefully. No, we can't, but I wish we could. But Taylor, what's up, man? Appreciate you being here. So, let's talk about how this football got distributed from Caleb Williams here in this one. Rushing the football 17 times, DeAndre Swift leads the way, 91 yards and a touchdown on the ground. He is continuing to have good day after good day after good day, just stacking those on top of each other for fantasy football purposes. Caleb himself, he gets in on the rushing action, 4 carries for 56 yards in this one as well. Roshan really not involved. Tyson Bagent comes in, sees a couple, really just knees to end the game. And then passing-wise, man, Cole Kmet, 5 for 70, 2 touchdowns. Keenan Allen, 5 for 40, 2 touchdowns. If you had those two guys and you had the balls to play them really in fantasy football, you're probably very happy with the output that they had. They both came down with every target that went their way, and 2 of them being touchdowns. I mean, you can't ask for much more than that. Rome Odunze goes 2 for 40 on 2 targets. DeAndre Swift, 4 for 28 in the air. DJ Moore, quiet outing in this one. In fact, I think we had him as a start of the week this week just because of the matchup. And look, process-wise, probably worked out. You see the Bears, they put a stomping on the Jaguars, but DJ Moore was not involved, 4 of 20. He had 5 targets there, so I guess, when you have Cole Kmet and Keenan Allen scoring 4 touchdowns combined, there's less food to go around at the table. Now, Andre says Caleb has beautiful matchups the rest of the season. He is a sneaky quarterback that we can definitely be looking at moving forward, and I don't know how sneaky he's going to be after this one, finishing as the number 1 QB on the week, but overall, this is why they drafted the kid, right? This is why they drafted the kid. Beautiful matchups, good player. He was working through his progressions. I mean, everything that I saw, I was very impressed with. Now, Element says, unlucky week for me. I started Marvin Harrison Jr. and Ayuk as well as Mason and Tolbert. I feel that. I had Ayuk, Mason, and Tolbert starting in leagues as well. So, unlucky for sure. Now, let's look at Jacksonville because Jacksonville, they put up 16 points. A lot of the chatter is going to be about Trevor Lawrence. They had 4 touchdowns that were dropped by Jaguars wide receivers in this game. 4 touchdowns dropped. That is definitely not what you want to see out of your offense if you have Trevor Lawrence here. 23 for 35, 2 touchdowns, 234 yards and interception. It ain't a spectacular day. We'll just say that. Rushing wise, my hell. Dearness Johnson leads the way, 6 for 28. Tank Bigsby involved, 7 for 24. Etienne leaves this game with another injury, 3 for -1 yards. If you played Travis Etienne in your leagues this week, which I played him in one of my leagues, he gave you negative points. He hurt you more than he actually helped you this week. Not great. And welcome back, Evan Engram. I said I was nervous about Evan Engram potentially being back into the lineup because, he's been out for a little while, and we don't know what it's going to look like with BTJ, Christian Kirk, Evan Engram, Gabe Davis, all of these options there. Oh, I'll tell you what it looks like. Tight end, 10 receptions for 102 yards. That is what you want to see from the tight end. So Evan Engram, I think moving forward, he's a guy that we're just going to be throwing into our lineups no matter what. We shouldn't really overthink it. Gabe Davis, 5 for 45. He gets 2 touchdowns. Like I said, there was a couple of dropped ones as well. He could have had even more. Christian Kirk, 3 for 39. Brian Thomas, 3 for 27. I said to bench Brian Thomas going into this matchup because it was a tough matchup overall on paper. Still looked that way. There's going to be definitely better days ahead for Brian Thomas Jr. So there you go. That is the Jaguars game. I think, really key takeaway for me as I was looking ahead. We already said it in the chat. Good matchups for Caleb Williams moving forward. Better days for DJ Moore ahead. DeAndre Swift, though. DeAndre Swift has a tougher schedule over the next little while. He has probably 2 more weeks. They go on to a bye, I think, here in week 7. They have a couple more weeks, maybe 2 after that, where they have some decent matchups. But then it gets pretty tough for DeAndre Swift as the running back schedule tightens up here at the end of the year. Maybe DeAndre Swift, he's a guy that I would potentially be selling high on if you have people in your league that are buying into the DeAndre Swift hype, which they should be because he's been performing very well. But if they're not paying attention to what the schedule looks like moving forward, you might be able to get one buy on him. And he's definitely somebody I would probably be looking to sell there. So let's move on to our next game here. We'll move on to the Cardinals and the Packers game. And Arizona, they dropped 2-4 now. They lose this one 13-34 to the Green Bay Packers, who are now 4-2 and in tied for second place here in the NFC North. Jordan Love leads the way for the Packers, 22 completions on 32 attempts for 258 yards, 4 touchdowns, and an interception. He looks very much like one of the best fantasy football quarterbacks that we can have moving forward. They're just going to throw the football a ton. There's going to be a lot of guys that are going to be involved in just kind of like San Francisco, where they have a lot of weapons on that offense, and you just want to play all of them every week because anybody can have a big game. It kind of feels the same way here in Green Bay, where you can play Christian Watson, you can play Dobbs, you can play Reed, you can play Josh Jacobs, you can play any of those guys, and somebody's going to have a big game every week. So I think that's kind of how I'm going to be operating with Green Bay moving forward. Element says, can't wait for the big injuries coming back to play. CMC, Puka have been on my bench all season. I've had Puka on my bench. I now have Nico on my bench. There's some big injuries that are definitely on the way. TJ Hawkinson on his way back, hopefully this next week. Lots of stuff coming, bringing the reinforcements. Now, rushing-wise, for the Packers, on paper, great matchup for Josh Jacobs. He goes 18 for 62, doesn't find the end zone. You want to see him get into the end zone. He hasn't really done it a lot this year. I need to see him get in there. Emmanuel Wilson's still involved a tiny bit, 7 for 54. Not a ton. 18-7, we can live with that from the carry standpoint, especially when Josh Jacobs is getting 3 receptions for 28 yards in the air as well, and Emmanuel Wilson's only seeing 1 of those. I think you can definitely still move forward with confidence in Josh Jacobs, but we really need to see him start getting into the end zone, man. It's getting quite annoying seeing, how many points that the Packers are scoring, and Josh Jacobs is just not the one, scoring the touchdown. So I want to see him start getting into the end zone. Outside of that, Emmanuel Wilson, he seems like a handcuff, but even then, they got Marshawn Lloyd chilling in the background, getting ready to come back from injury himself, and that could further muddy the backfield behind Josh Jacobs. But I think right now it's very clear that Josh Jacobs is the number 1 here in this offense, and anybody who's been nervous about Wilson should not be nervous about Wilson moving forward. Green Bay receiving-wise, Christian Watson in this one, he was expected to miss multiple weeks. He only misses 1 game. He comes back. He goes 3 for 68 and a touchdown on 4 targets. He is kind of that big red zone target, the big play downfield. That is what Christian Watson is, and he's going to be very inconsistent. He kind of feels to me like a kind of almost like a Gabe Davis in a way, but much better than a Gabe Davis, but I hope that doesn't offend Green Bay Packers fans. That said, though, good day for him if you played him in your lineups and your flex. Romeo Doubs, he finds the end zone twice in this one after holding out, saying he wanted more touches. How does 2 touchdowns sound for some additional touches there? And then Jaden Reed, he got banged up in this one, left for a little bit, came back. Overall, when your guy's leaving off the field in the middle of the game, it's not great, but 6 for 28 and a touchdown. I think he salvaged his day. He obviously would like to see more on the receiving end. And then Tucker Kraft, we all expected him to have a big day. 2 for 13, not great. Wicks 1 for 9. He got banged up in this one as well. Wicks is the reason why we wanted Wicks so much off of waivers was because we expected a multi-week absence for Christian Watson, and with Watson back in the lineup, Wicks is number 4 on the depth chart, and you don't really want that. Andre says, Lloyd worries me a little as a Jacobs owner. He's a dog. I like Lloyd, but it's hard to, mid-season, when in the preseason you miss time to injury, the regular season you're missing time to injury, it's hard to just kind of throw that guy back into the lineup. Excuse me, folks. I am a little bit under the weather today, so the voice might go in and out a tiny bit. But, it's hard to kind of implement that guy mid-season, so we'll see what happens. Overall, let's go to the Arizona, though. There is some stuff to talk about here. Kyler Murray, he goes 22 for 32, 214, and a touchdown. He has been very disappointing to start the year. Very disappointing. Outside of like 2 games, you haven't got the production that you wanted out of Kyler Murray. Benson actually out-carries James Conner in this one with 26 yards, averaging 5.2 an attempt. Conner goes 7 for 24. Look, you're not going to win the game, Arizona. And I know, that wasn't necessarily the game plan. Obviously, when you're down, so much so early, you don't really have the luxury of running the football. But you don't win the game with James Conner seeing 7 carries. You don't win the game, running 23 times as a team. And Kyler Murray is 7 of those carries. Like, that's not how you're going to win the football game if you're Arizona. They want to establish the run. And, excuse me, man. Now, Arizona, receiving-wise, though, Trey McBride, he leads the way, 8 for 96. Amari DiMercado, 5 for 39 in the air. Greg Dortch, 3 for 36. Basically, everybody in here except Michael Wilson, who scored the touchdown. Not really the day you wanted. Obviously, if you're in a tight end premium, Trey McBride, he did his thing. But Marvin Harrison Jr., 0 for 0 for 0. 2 targets. He gets knocked out of this one with a concussion in the game. So just not a good day from Arizona all around. You need to see more rushing attempts for James Conner. You need to see Marvin Harrison on the football field, because throwing the football to Michael Wilson as your wide receiver 1 all game, and Greg Dortch, especially against a good Green Bay Packers team, ain't going to get it done. Element says, Jacobs owner as well. Very disappointed in him. Might even drop him since I'm in a 6-man league. Wow. Yeah, I mean, I guess in a 6-man league, he's maybe droppable, but that sounds wild. I still like Josh Jacobs' rest of the season schedule, but I get it, man. He hasn't found the end zone, and it's been very disappointing. Let's go to this Colts and Titans game. This Colts and Titans game is next up. This was a slow game for the most part. They were kind of pacing each other through the first half. Both teams go into the half 10-10, and then really it was just a tiny bit more from the Colts in the second half that ended up getting them this 20-17 win. Going into the week, we had expected pretty much all the way up almost until game time, where we had expected Anthony Richardson to play. I remember even in the morning doing our start-sit stream before the London game, we were talking about, okay, it does seem like Anthony Richardson is expected to play. So, we're going to temper the expectations for the receiving options for Indianapolis because Richardson will be under center. Psych. It's Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco was under center. And again, nothing spectacular out of Flacco, but he does elevate those receiving options there in Indianapolis. Joe Flacco goes 22 for 38, 189 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception, just enough to get the job done. I do believe that when Anthony Richardson is back to 100% health, it is his job. There's going to be some people that say, keep Joe Flacco under center. It's not going to be Joe Flacco under center when Richardson is healthy. He's going to come back. He's going to be the guy. Now, Griffin in the chat says, I guess call back to the Arizona game. AZ has an amazing media team. Every preseason, they dupe the public into believing they'll be a relevant offense, and every year they roll out overrated Kyler Murray to scowl when he misses a pass. I love the media team that they have there too, but yeah, I mean, I get it. That said, rushing, no Jonathan Taylor in this one as well for Indianapolis. Tyler Goodson, he goes 8 for 51. Trey Sermon, he gets 18 carries for 29 yards. This was not the matchup that you wanted Trey Sermon to have in general. It's just not. They're a good defense, a good defensive line there in Tennessee, and that might be one of the only few things about Tennessee that is decent right now. So not great from Trey Sermon. Goodson, gets enough of it done. And then I think Goodson still had some in the air as well, 4 catches for 14 yards. You like to see that if you're in a PPR league at the running back position. But the leading receiver, Josh Downs, 7 for 66 and a touchdown. With Joe Flacco, under center, Josh Downs has been good, man. You keep playing him. You keep playing him. You keep playing him. I think even next week you probably flex him and see what happens, even if it's Richardson. Michael Pittman, he goes from trending to be on IR to playing in this one, and then he's catching a jump ball touchdown. 3 for 35 and a touchdown. Outside of that, not a great day, but really, that's it, folks. Like, there's really not a lot to take away from the offense here in Indy. Until they get some of their guys back, it's low upside, low ceiling type of play from these folks. But looking at Tennessee, who did lose this game, like I mentioned, also dropping to 1-4. 0-3 at home is crazy if you're Tennessee. You hate to see that. Will Levis, 16 for 27, 95 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. I think we are this close to seeing Will Levis get benched. If he does get benched, it will be Mason Rudolph time. I give him 1 or 2 more losses, and it's Mason Rudolph the rest of the way. Just my personal opinion. That's the way that I feel like that'll go. Tony Pollard, though, he is the bright spot on this offense. 17 carries for 93 yards and a touchdown. He also, in the air, he catches 3 footballs, but he goes for -5. So I guess if you're in a PPR league, you still come out on top, positive on those points just from the receptions. But the big thing, I think, really for Tennessee receiving-wise, you see Calvin Ridley down there. 0 for 0 for 0 on 8 targets. He leads the way with 8 targets in this offense, comes up with 0 receptions for 0 yards, 0 touchdowns. Not good for Calvin Ridley. He's in the locker room post-game talking about, you need to get me the ball earlier. If you're not getting me the ball earlier, how am I going to be better in the game, blah, blah, blah. Bro, we need to see you catch the ball when it comes your way. And I get it. A lot of it is, coming from Will Levis, so some of those are not catchable. I get that, but damn, bro, we can't see you go 0 for 0 for 0, and then you be in the locker room demanding you need more targets. It's just not good, man. Not good vibes in Tennessee. Pretty much anybody outside of Tony Pollard you do not want on this offense. Pollard is the only guy on this offense you want for fantasy football purposes, and he's got a good schedule the rest of the way, man. He's a guy that I would probably be trying to trade for. We were talking about trying to sell DeAndre Swift. If you can sell Swift for Pollard plus a piece, I think I'm definitely down for that if you can get that done. What do we got chat-wise? A couple things in here before we move on to the next game. Element says ESPN has CMC as coming back on Sunday. I don't know if that's true. They said early November. Andre says, I give up on Marvin Harrison. Me too. I don't know if I'm giving up on him, but yeah, you can't, the concussion, you can't really predict that. Trade high on Josh Downs before Richardson comes back. I agree. Just drop Dell and then EHE. Who's EHE? Maybe MHJ? Is that what you were maybe trying to put in there? Maybe. George says, I have Juju for free right now to pick up. Should I add him? If so, who do I drop? Keon, Waddle, JSN? I think you could probably drop Keon for Juju, personally. Element said, just drop Dell before the week, and then he went off. Going to be picking him up again for Mooney. Drop Spears for Vidal and redraft half PPR. I think you can. Now, let's move on to our next game here. Next game is going to be the Texans and the Patriots. This was not necessarily a close one, but we got the debut of Drake May in this matchup. Drake May, first game, rookie quarterback for the Patriots. They are now 1-5, 0-3 at home as well. The Texans 5-1, 41 points in this one. Good game overall. They're without Nico Collins, but Joe Mixon is back into the lineup. CJ Stroud goes out there 20 for 31, 192, 3 touchdowns and an interception. Joe Mixon 13 for 102 and a touchdown. Dameon Pierce 8 for 76 and a touchdown. That running game is looking good in Houston, folks, and Joe Mixon looks like he is the man every time he is in the lineup because he is going crazy every time he touches the football for the most part. Houston receiving-wise, I said no Nico Collins. Diggs leads the way, 6 for 77 and a touchdown. Dell goes 7 for 57 and a touchdown as well. Mixon 2 for 30 and a touchdown in the air. Look, they're getting it done. Houston is getting it done, and they will continue to keep getting it done. Excuse me, folks. We got a visitor. The cat that I have is trying to hop up in the stream, I guess. Now, that said, like I mentioned, with Nico out, I think Dell, Diggs, Mixon, all of these guys are good starts moving forward. We should definitely be playing them with confidence, especially in these upcoming matchups. So let's see where we're at. Andre says, can we consider Marvin Harrison Jr. a flop yet or not? Is it too early? I still think it's too early. Element says too early. Andre says fantasy-wise. I still think it's too early. And he says, let's see what Andrew says. Yeah, I mean, I'm not really dropping him or doing anything crazy with him. I still think he has some upside in this offense, but we'll see. We have to see it, right? Clip says, I traded Darnell and Tracy Jr. for Moore and Vikings defense. Did I win? I think so. Potentially. Element says, I'm going to transfer to being a Texans fan. The Cowboys don't know how to play football and make changes. Hey, maybe not a bad move. Houston's looking good. Now let's talk about New England, because New England, they looked not bad. Let's just say they looked better than they have in weeks past. Drake May, he goes 20 for 33, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He also goes out there, 5 carries for 38 yards. That's the dual threat ability of Drake May. He had this, coming out of UNC. We expected that to be something that he could put on display here, especially for fantasy football teams. No Ramondre Stevenson in the lineup, so Antonio Gibson goes 13 for 19, giving us 1.5 yards per carry. That's not good. That's not going to get it done. But overall, outside of that, you didn't really want any of these folks. But going into the receiving options for New England, I think there's some pickups here, man. I think there's definitely some pickups. Demario Douglas, he's going to be a guy that I think needs to be picked up off of waivers. He's going to be on our waiver show coming out tomorrow morning, because with Drake May under center, you're going to get more passing volume. You're going to get more talented quarterback play. Demario Douglas, he is kind of like Josh Downs was when Drake May was at UNC throwing the football to Josh Downs in the slot. Demario Douglas plays kind of the same way. I could see them having a really good rapport in the back half of the year. So 6 for 92 and a touchdown from Douglas. I think that's a little bit closer to what we can expect on a week-by-week basis. Maybe not the touchdown every week, but 6 for 92. That seems like it should be some of the same that we have moving forward. Outside of that, Jalen Polk, he didn't have the day. 1 for 4 yards on 4 targets, but he is definitely the second most talented wide receiver in this room, and somebody I would also be keeping an eye on. Maybe throw a $0 waiver bid and see what happens over the next upcoming weeks, 1 or 2 weeks here for the Patriots. So, Booty, he had the touchdown. Hunter Henry had a touchdown. Maybe Hunter Henry is a bye week plug-in now, but other than that, you don't really want many of these guys. Griffin says, we can consider MHJ a flop versus where you drafted him, but he still has solid production in his future. Yep, that's probably the best way to look at it. Cannot wait for that Lions-Vikings game. Do you think you'll be able to contain Monty and Gibbs? I don't know. The defense is good. That's definitely probably the best offense that we have played so far up to this point, though. We played Houston. They didn't have Mixon, but we played Houston. We played, San Francisco. But that's going to be a tough test. We'll see. I'm excited for it, too, though. Clip says Njoku for Tucker Kraft. I would probably lean Njoku rest of the season. Now let's move on to our next game here. Our next game is going to be the Buccaneers and the Saints, and this was a good game too. The Bucs put up 50 points, my guy. Like, they put up 50 points on the Saints offense, or I guess on the Saints defense. And keep in mind, going into halftime, we're looking at a really close game. It was 27 to 24 going into halftime. They were down by 3 points. And then the second half, the Saints go 0 points the rest of the way. Not great overall. But Spencer Rattler in the first half, he looked pretty damn solid, man. He looked okay. He ends up finishing this one. Actually, let's talk about Tampa first. They're 4-2. They're the winners of the game. Let's talk about them. Baker Mayfield goes 24 for 36, 325, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. You don't want to see those touchdowns. I mean, you don't want to see the interceptions there. Obviously, that's a lot of them to have. But overall, rushing, Sean Tucker, welcome to the party. 14 for 136 and a touchdown. Bucky, 14 for 81 and a touchdown. If you were excited about Bucky Irving with no Rachaad White, let's introduce you to Sean Tucker. Sean Tucker, the next guy in this backfield that's going to make this annoying. I am going to be worried moving forward with guys like Tucker, Irving, White. If they turn this into a three-headed monster, now that Tucker has gone out and shown this, it's going to be so messy for Tampa. It'll be good for their football team, long term, but it's going to be messy for fantasy football purposes. I just can't imagine, really wanting to roster any of these Tampa rushing options at the moment. No matter how much, the internet wants you to hype Bucky Irving or the internet wants you to hate Rachaad White, whatever. I'm very nervous about all of them. Tampa, receiving wise, Godwin, he goes 11 for 125 and 2 touchdowns. 13 targets in this one as well. Tucker in the air, Ryan Miller, Mike Evans. Mike Evans, he got the Marshawn Lattimore treatment in this one. We kind of expected that to happen. We said temper the expectations for Mike Evans, but Godwin, he stepped up big in his absence, and he's going to finish as I think right now, the wide receiver 1 on the week in your PPR leagues. So overall, just a very, very solid game from Tampa, outside of maybe the 3 interceptions from Baker, but it's just a good Tampa team, man, overall. Now let's look at New Orleans. Spencer Rattler goes 22 for 40, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Like I said, the first half, he looked a lot better than he did in the second half. Kamara still, on the ground, 13 for 40 and a touchdown. Also in the air, Kamara goes 5 for 24. So he kind of salvages his day. Not a huge day from Alvin Kamara, but a decent day nonetheless. Rattler also rushing the football a little bit, having a little bit more dynamic to his game than a guy like Derek Carr. Moreau, Juwan Johnson, Bub Means, all these guys lead the way, and really the reason is because Chris Olave leaves this game with a concussion as well. So Spencer Rattler goes out there, no Olave, really throwing to Moreau, Juwan Johnson, Bub Means, Cedric Wilson. Like it wasn't great for the Saints, but they looked good for 2 quarters, and then Tampa took over. So there you go. Andre says, Mason and Downs for Gibbs, full PPR. Do I make the trade? 1,000%. I want the Jahmyr Gibbs side. Element says, my backup league is crazy. Lamar, Kamara, Mason, Jay Jettas, Reed, Bowers, Hubbard. It's a solid team. Very solid team. But let's move on to the next game here, folks, because there's not a lot to talk about in that blowout. I guess really just Baker Mayfield is looking legit, man. He continues to finish as some of the top fantasy scorers every single week. Now, this matchup that we had here, Cleveland versus Philadelphia. Philadelphia, they win this one. It was tighter than it probably should have been. Cleveland drops to 1-5. Philly goes to 3-2. Nick Sirianni is the corniest of cornballs of all time. He's just chirping his own fans, Philadelphia fans, after the game, like just chirping them, dude. Shut up. Like I can't stand Nick Sirianni, bro. He is the most mid-coach in the NFL, and he talks the most shit, and he'll do it to his own fans. And I get it. It's because I think a lot of them were chanting like "Fire Sirianni" in the middle of the game or something like that, and he went and chirped to him after they won. Bro, we're talking about Cleveland. Cleveland has been so bad, and y'all are the Philadelphia Eagles, and you beat them by 4. It was a close game all the way to the end. Like, what are we doing, Nick Sirianni? Clearly, you didn't coach him well enough, because this should not have been a close game. I digress. I don't want to talk about Sirianni, but I just thought it was very corny, very embarrassing for Philly fans to have their coach and Nick Sirianni just doing all that chirping. Whatever. Element says at least we can both hate the Eagles. Yeah, man. I mean, I don't even hate the Eagles. I like their team. I just think Sirianni is a cornball. Clip says, is Travis Etienne a buy low right now? I'm not buying Etienne at the moment. I'm not buying him. Philly passing wise, though, let's talk about them. Hurts goes 16 for 25, 2 touchdowns. Probably one of his better performances since early on in the year. It does help when you get A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith back in the lineup. Rushing wise, though, for Philly, we did not get what we needed out of Saquon Barkley. He goes 18 for 47, not a touchdown in this one. He adds 2 for 7 on the ground. Very, very pedestrian-like day for Saquon Barkley, which is unfortunate, man, because he does feel like one of the absolute game-breaking type of running backs in fantasy at the moment. So you want to see Saquon Barkley go out there and dominate for you on a week-by-week basis. He's the player that you drafted, and it looked like early on he was just a set-it-and-forget-it top. He's going to be a top 5 running back every single week, and he didn't do that in this one. Overall, we'll see how that develops moving forward, but it's interesting that all the weapons are back, and that's what kind of happens. Now, Jalen Hurts, he gets 14 carries for 33 yards. Obviously, if you're playing, in Superflex, if you're playing in leagues where, it's a 4-point pass touchdown, whatever. Jalen Hurts rushing the football 14 times, even though he only went for 33 yards, that's a lot of extra points you can tack up at the quarterback position. And then receiving-wise, A.J. Brown, welcome back to the lineup, 6 for 116 and a touchdown. Devontae Smith also scores a touchdown there, 3 for 64. And Dallas Goedert leaves this game with an injury. Grant Calcaterra, he steps in, 4 for 67 at the tight end position. And that is really the offense for your Eagles. It's going to run through Barkley. It's going to run through Brown. It's going to run through Smith. Calcaterra, it's nice to see him step in. I liked him a long time ago coming into the NFL. He was pretty talented, but yeah, man, it's just playing behind Dallas Goedert. A little dynasty gem from way back. Now let's look at Cleveland. Passing wise, Deshaun Watson, 16 for 23, 168, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Deshaun, my guy, 0 touchdowns. What are we doing, bro? Pierre Strong, 8 for 43. Foreman, 10 for 31. Jerome Ford, he goes 2 for 14, and he leaves this game with a hamstring injury. Burning me yet again. I almost rage dropped Jerome Ford in this one because I'm getting sick of his shit, man. Almost rage dropped him. I think he's getting to the point where he is droppable, though. Nick Chubb almost on his way back. Now Ford maybe going to miss a couple weeks, 1 or 2 weeks with this hamstring injury. A bye week coming up in like week 10, I think, is for the Browns. Ford's very quickly headed towards like handcuff Tyler Algier territory, and Tyler Algier might be better than that. So, yeah, man. It is what it is. Receiving wise, you had Amari Cooper lead the way, 4 for 42. Judy goes 1 for 35. And like we said, when Deshaun Watson is not throwing touchdowns and he's not doing the things that he needs to do as a quarterback in the NFL, being paid $250 million, fully guaranteed, this is the result. And nobody is really playable at that point. So, moving forward, Cleveland options. Chubb is on his way back. I really don't think it's the smartest decision for them, to give Chubb a full workload off a multi-ligament injury and, just feed him the football, because the injury data is going to tell you that that's not the smartest decision. But I don't know if they have a choice here in Cleveland. They might just need to give Nick Chubb the rock every damn play and just see what happens, even if he's not efficient with it. So we'll see what happens in Cleveland. But overall, this is a dumpster fire roster. And Element says, I don't know about Jet. Defense can be good in Wilson and Hall. Oh, I think that's in response to Griffin, who says, if you never draft a Jag, a Brown, a Colt, or a Jet, you'll be fine in fantasy. And I think, hindsight, looking back at it, if you don't draft players from bad teams, you probably more often than not, draft good players on good teams. That's probably the way to go. But obviously, hindsight's always 20/20. Let's move on to this next game here. We have another one. We'll talk about the Commanders and the Ravens. This was probably the game of the week that everybody was excited about going into the matchup. When you look at it on paper, we were going to see Jaden Daniels versus Lamar Jackson. This game started off slow. First quarter, we had it 3-3. It was just not a lot of points. The number 1 scoring offense versus the number 2 scoring offense in the NFL. You got the dynamic of Lamar Jackson and Jaden Daniels as rushing dual threat quarterbacks. The run game in Baltimore looking spicy. They end up winning this one 30-23. Lamar goes 20 for 26, 323, a touchdown and an interception. You want to see more passing touchdowns from him, but if it's not resulting in the passing touchdowns, you are going to see that result in Derrick Henry rushing touchdowns, which is going to be 24 for 132 and 2 touchdowns. You love to see that. Lamar adds another 40 on the ground. And really for the receiving game, Zay Flowers goes 9 for 132. We had him as a start of the week. The matchup looked perfect. It did turn out just that way. Zay Flowers finishing very well for us in fantasy football this week. And hello, we saw a little bit of Mark Andrews. Revival, 3 for 66 and a touchdown. You like to see that at the beginning of this game because Mark Andrews has been non-existent. It's just like when we first started, we were talking trash about him in our group chat. It's like we're looking at holes in our lineups, and Mark Andrews is just becoming a black hole in the lineup that's just like, sucking away all of the fantasy football points, and then boom, scores a touchdown. Hey, I guess all it took was a little bit of trash talk. You love to see that for Mark Andrews if you have him. Now, I will say, if you are going to be looking forward, I don't know if Mark Andrews is going to continue to do that. Hopefully he builds upon that. Zay Flowers looks like the number one in the receiving option. I think Zay Flowers is a very talented wide receiver 2 that you can buy and put on your lineup for the rest of the year, and you can get wide receiver 2 production out of him pretty much every single week. Derrick Henry, he looks like the running back 1 in fantasy football at the moment. For Washington, Jaden Daniels goes 24 for 35, 269 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He takes 3 sacks in this one. Nothing crazy, but he also adds 6 carries for 22 yards on the ground. No Brian Robinson in this matchup, so they lean on Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler really can't get much going. The matchup was bad in the first place. He goes 9 for 21. Jerry McNichols gets in there as well. But leading the way receiving, 4 for 68, Zach Ertz. Noah Brown, 4 for 58. And Terry McLaurin scores twice. Terry McLaurin, he's not getting a ton of volume. 6 for 53 on 7 targets. That's probably one of his better volume days over the last couple of weeks, but he keeps finding the end zone. Terry McLaurin, he's a boom-bust option that I think can kind of be considered in that wide receiver 2 range moving forward. And if you want to potentially trade for Terry McLaurin, you're banking on a hot streak of touchdowns in a row right now. But the way that this offense is scoring points and the way that they're clicking, he just might be the red zone option here in this offense. So I definitely don't mind going to get a guy like Terry McLaurin. So let's move on to our next game here. Our next game is going to be the Chargers and the Broncos. Another game that was a little interesting to start the game because through 3 quarters, Denver goes scoreless. 3 quarters. They don't score their first points until the 4th quarter. And in the 4th quarter, Los Angeles goes scoreless. So it made it kind of close when it shouldn't have been close because the majority of the day it was not a close game. But the Chargers, they win this one 23 to 16. They are now 3-2. The Broncos are 3-3. You get to have Justin Herbert, who goes 21 for 34. 2 touchdowns, probably more passing volume than he's had all year. I think it is the most that he's had all year, and it's probably going to be one of his better passing days moving forward. It's unfortunate because they want to establish the run, and Herbert, he's just so talented, but we're not going to get that type of passing production out of him all the time. J.K. Dobbins, 25 carries, 96 yards, a touchdown. This was a bad matchup on paper. Doesn't matter when you give the guy 25 touches on the ground. Absolute bell cow in this offense. Whether he's efficient or not, doesn't really matter when you're getting that type of volume. Darius Davis gets 2 carries. Kamani Vidal gets 4 carries. Vidal also had 2 for 40 receiving and a touchdown receiving, which makes him an interesting enough waiver wire pickup this week with Gus Edwards going to IR. Vidal is next man up behind Dobbins, so if anything ever happens to Dobbins, Vidal would probably step into that bell cow type of role. So he's an interesting guy for waivers. I think I'll probably be making him the thumbnail of our waiver wire video this week, but he's somebody I'm keeping an eye on. Lad McConkey in and out of this game with some injury. 4 for 43, kind of led the way for the most part with Simi Fehoko going 2 for 44. There's not a lot really receiving wise that you want in this Chargers offense. It's the run game that you want, and J.K. Dobbins is the guy to have. So there you are. Element says, what's your thoughts on Hollywood Brown? ESPN says he will be back beginning of 2025. Yeah, I mean, he's done for the rest of the year. He's not going to be back this year, so we'll see. And he's a free agent going into next offseason, so I don't even know if he re-signs with Kansas City. Denver, Bo Nix goes 19 for 33, 2 passing touchdowns and an interception. His roller coaster of emotions is just always up and down. He plays well, then he doesn't play well, and he plays sporadic. And it's like a cross between, I don't even know, man. It's just he's all over the place. He's got to get more consistent. He rushes the football 6 for 61. Javonte 6 for 23. Really nobody else there either. And then receiving-wise, Devon Vele, he goes 4 for 78, leading in rushing yards. But Cortland Sutton and Troy Franklin, they're the guys that find the end zone. 53 yards and a touchdown for Sutton. Really the only guy that probably even had a decent fantasy football day for you that was maybe even started. But it's going to be interesting. So we'll see what happens, man. Over that, there's still not a lot of options on either of these teams fantasy football-wise that you really want. I've been saying it all offseason and all year. Not all offseason, all year. That the Denver Broncos offense right now is just, there's nobody. There's nobody really worth rostering. And I get it, Javonte, he's kind of there sometimes, but nah, I'm good. So let's move on to the next game. Hopefully a little bit better. Here's the thing about this week, man. This week was kind of where the good teams separated themselves and the bad teams, they separated themselves. So it's like you had the good teams be good, the bad teams are bad, and we're starting to see what we've expected out of some of these teams. Now, Pittsburgh, they play the Raiders in this one. They win 32-13. Aiden O'Connell gets a start over Gardner Minshew after Gardner Minshew was benched. Pittsburgh still rolling with Justin Fields. They are now 4-2. Justin goes 14 for 24 for 145, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. I'm just telling you right now, man, Pittsburgh, they're winning games, but Justin Fields is not playing good football. I hate to tell you this, but Justin Fields is not playing good football. He looks good in fantasy football because he is rushing the football and he is scoring rushing touchdowns. But in real life, for the Steelers, he is not doing what an NFL quarterback should do. Now, is he going to continue to keep getting the touchdowns, or is he going to continue to keep getting the wins? Potentially, but I really wouldn't mind seeing what this offense looks like with Russell Wilson under center. Now, that said, Najee goes 14 for 106 and a touchdown. Justin Fields, he gets 2 rushing touchdowns on the ground after rushing 11 times. George Pickens, 3 for 53, and nobody scores. A Pat Freiermuth touchdown was passed and called back, and unfortunately, that is going to cost me my win in our Idiot League Mates because a Freiermuth touchdown was called back on an illegal shift or a holding or something like that. Other than that, there really are no pass-catching options that are going to be relevant in this Pittsburgh Steelers defense or offense because Justin Fields is throwing for 140 yards a week. When you're throwing for 140 yards, you can't really do a lot in the receiving game. That's just the way it is. For the Raiders, like I said, pretty ugly. Aiden O'Connell gets a start, 227, 1-1. Alexander Mattison turning into mini Derrick Henry, 14 carries for 33 yards and a touchdown. He had a second one that was also called back. I say mini Derrick Henry just because he was being used on the goal line and getting a ton of carries early on the goal line as well. But one of them was called back. Brock Bowers leads the way. If you need tight ends, Brock Bowers is the guy. 9 for 71, no touchdowns, but really there's just nobody, man. There's nobody in these offenses, and I feel like we've said that for the last 3 games, but we've talked about, the Browns, we've talked about the Chargers, the Broncos, the Steelers, the Raiders. There's just not a lot of players in most of these offenses that you really even want. So they are. Element says, where has Pickens been? He has been handcuffed by Justin Fields, throwing for 130 yards a week. You can't be relevant when Justin Fields doesn't even crack 200. And Caleb says, Justin Fields is the best fantasy QB, worst real-life QB for your fantasy weapons. It's horrible, man. When you run for 2 touchdowns a week, good for your fantasy purposes, but other than that, he kills everybody around him in the offense. The good news was Najee Harris had a day, and the matchup said that he should, so on paper, the defensive matchup, but he had a decent day. But other than that, man, let's talk about another offense, hopefully, where we have some actual options that we can talk about. Let's talk about this score. The Detroit Lions and the Dallas Cowboys. The Lions absolutely stomp the Cowboys, 47-9. 3 field goals for the Cowboys, no offensive touchdowns, and Detroit's lining up Dan Skipper and freaking Penei Sewell out there on option routes and all this other stuff. It's bad, man. It was bad. This was a stomping. But let's talk about the Detroit Lions first because they win this game. They go 4-1. Dallas is now 3-3. Jared Goff, 18 for 25, 315, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He's playing some damn good football right now, man. Jared Goff is playing some damn good football. On the ground, David Montgomery goes 12 for 80 and 2 touchdowns. Gibbs goes 12 for 63. You also had in the receiving game, Jamison Williams go 3 for 76 and a touchdown. Amon-Ra 4 for 37 and a touchdown. Sam Laporta 1 for 52 and a touchdown. Everybody scores. Everybody except Jahmyr Gibbs, that is. But like I said, they were throwing a bunch of options for offensive linemen and things like that. This was a game from the Detroit Lions, and it felt like there was bad blood there because I can't imagine why they would have continued stomping and trying to throw these crazy plays out there unless there was some bad blood. So we'll see. Dallas, though, Dak, he goes 178 on 17 for 33. No touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Like I said, they just didn't get an offensive touchdown in this game. Rico Dowdle, 5 for 25. Zeke, 8 for 17. And this is unfortunate because Zeke complained just saying like he wasn't getting enough touch, blah, 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 blah. Right after we saw Rico Dowdle take over the backfield, and then Jerry Jones and this team just gives Zeke more touches, and he looks horrible every time he touches the football. The best thing for the offense is to give Dowdle the ball. I don't know what we're doing here. CeeDee Lamb, 7 for 89. You know, from a receiving standpoint, decent day. You need to see him find the end zone. Tolbert, 4 for 43. And everybody else, whatever. Jake Ferguson, non-existent. But this was a bad matchup for them on paper. That Detroit Lions defense is good. And one thing is the Aiden Hutchinson. Aiden Hutchinson was carted off after suffering that leg injury in the third quarter. Unfortunately, that looks like, you know, we haven't had official word, but it looks like it is a broken leg. If you saw the injury and you get squeamish with injuries, you know, the leg, it wrapped around the other guy's leg. Like your leg is not supposed to do that. The bone's broken, and very nasty injury, and he's going to be done for the year, it looks like. So unfortunate, because he looked like he was going to be in the running for Defensive Player of the Year this year. So very talented player, very good player. Season cut short, and big loss for the Detroit Lions defense there. What do we got? A couple chats in here. Element says Brandon Aubrey for MVP. Maybe. Caleb says time to trade away Parsons and call Ben Johnson for a head coaching gig. Ben Johnson needs to be a head coach at the end of this year, hopefully. Parsons been doing podcasts instead of football. I'd take Jason Garrett at this point. Jerry Jones said he isn't even thinking of getting rid of McCarthy. I probably wouldn't get rid of McCarthy either, personally, but is what it is. Caleb says the crack was loud. Griffin says compound fracture. Scary one. Yeah, overall, just not good, man. And then Element says Zeke can go get fat and retire. He's not the man, so out of shape. Rico is the man. I hate this team. I apologize, Element. I don't want to make you go through this, so we will move on. We'll go to our next game. Still got some stuff to talk about. I think we got, what is it? 2 more games, and we are at the 45-minute mark, so we might be able to get this in the hour, just like I had wanted to. Let's talk about Falcons-Panthers. The Falcons win this one 38-20. Carolina, remember when we were like excited about Andy Dalton for like 1 week? Yeah, he's still Andy Dalton, folks. Like, that was cool, but yeah, I'm good. Kirk Cousins, he leads the way, 19 for 30, 225 and a touchdown. Not the day we wanted out of Kirk after he goes out and goes for 500 yards last week. Algier and Bijan, 18 carries and 15 carries, 105 and 95 yards. So we really do get, 200 rushing out of these guys and 3 rushing touchdowns. So good day for those running backs. You still hate to see that Algier is getting 18 of the carries and Bijan is still being out carried by Algier, but I guess this makes up for it this week. Still maybe wanting to... I think we're still selling Bijan at this point. London goes 6 for 74 and a touchdown. This is just going to continue to be... I think this is just rest of the season. Just stuff like this all year long. Kyle Pitts, 3 for 70. Darnell Mooney, 3 for 38. When we all decided to start believing in you. Nice. Love it. But overall, pretty solid offensive day from Atlanta. The guys that you needed to perform, they performed. Bijan, Drake London, even Kyle Pitts, 3 for 70. You'll take it based off of what Pitts has done over the last couple of weeks. So we'll take it. Carolina, Andy Dalton goes 26 for 38, 221, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Chuba goes 18 for 92. Does not find the end zone on the ground or in the air this week. But overall, he's looked very good behind this line. Deontay Johnson, 6 for 78 and a touchdown, still salvages his day. JT Sanders, dynasty potential. Both of these guys, Jalen Coker and Jatavian Sanders, these are dynasty guys that I would be looking at if they're available on your waiver wires, which maybe they're not, but if they are, they would be ads for me in dynasty formats. Decent days from them. Leggett, he gets the touchdown. He hops on that horse and he rides it. And then Chuba Hubbard, 5 for 11 in the air as well. The PPR points of 5 receptions from Chuba is nice. You like to see that. Fumbles from Chuba, but they didn't lose it, so it doesn't matter. Overall, decent day for these guys. I think this is a great question, RSG. And he says, how many more weeks is Hubbard the guy in Carolina? So I think right now, we got to think about it like this. Carolina, they still have to activate Jonathan Brooks off the pup. And so once they activate Jonathan Brooks off the pup, that will open up a 21-day practice window, which is a 3-week practice window for him. Sometimes guys take 1 week off the pup. Some guys take 2 or 3 weeks off the pup. to practice before they're actually activated into the active lineup. So I think right now, we're potentially looking at Chuba Hubbard being a guy where we could see anywhere between 2 to 5 more weeks of potential production from him, depending on if they activate Jonathan Brooks. Now, if you want my educated guess, again, I'm not working for the team. I'm not the doctor. I don't know, whatever, but I have an educated guess based off of what we've seen historically. I would assume that Jonathan Brooks gets activated this week, and then he probably practices for 2 weeks, 3 weeks before they really activate him. So that would be 3 more weeks of Chuba Hubbard most likely. And then it's going to be a little bit of a ramp-up period too. So it'll probably be Chuba with Jonathan spelling him, and then eventually it will get to the point where there's Jonathan Brooks overtaking in the backfield. And if that's the case, it could be week 11, 12 by the time we see Jonathan Brooks take over, and that would be right in time for your fantasy playoffs. So if you're relying on Chuba Hubbard, he might get you to the playoffs, but he might not be there for you in the playoffs, which would be annoying and pretty unfortunate. But that's kind of the way that I see it. Element says, hopefully the rest of the season. He's been carrying me, so we'll see. Like I said, that's kind of my opinion, my guess there, based off of some historic production. So we'll go to this last game here. We got Sunday night, Bengals, Giants. Pretty boring game, honestly. Was 7-0 at half, 17-7 at the end of the game. Cincinnati wins this one. They're now 2-4. New York is 2-4 as well. If anybody would have said at the beginning of the year that going into week 7, the Bengals and the Giants had the same record, somebody probably would have said the Giants are having a really good season. No, that's not the case. Joe Burrow, though, they win this one. He goes 19 for 28. No passing touchdowns, no interceptions. But you know what he did? He ran for 47 yards on a 3rd and long. He ran for 47 yards. We had 4 carries for 55 yards for Burrow. That's just abnormal. Chase Brown, 10 for 53 and a rushing touchdown. Zach Moss, 6 for 13. Unfortunately, folks, I think if you had Zach Moss, Chase Brown is now the number 1. He took over the backfield. Chase Brown is 1A in this backfield, and Zach Moss is 1B now, which it hasn't been over the last couple of weeks. It is Chase now. So that's just the way that I'm projecting it moving forward. T. Higgins, 7 for 77, still looking great ever since he's come back from the injury. Chase goes 5 for 72. Yoshavash, Chase Brown, Eric all these other guys, pretty non-existent. Griffin says, how are there 18 watching and only 3 likes? I feel like I miss all the lies if I don't hit like. YouTube algo is cheeks. Appreciate it, Griffin. That is the case. You want to see people hit that like button. That does help the algo. So if you guys are watching and you do enjoy the content, you've enjoyed the content up to this point, you think it's engaging, whatever, you just want to support, hit the like button. Let's talk about New York, though. Daniel Jones, 22 for 41, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Tyrone Tracy leads the way again in this backfield, 17 for 50 and a touchdown on the ground. He is now, at minimum, the number 2 running back in this backfield, and potentially made an argument 2 weeks now in a row where he could be a complementary piece for more work with Devin Singletary in the lineup. Darius Slayton, 6 for 57. Tyrone Tracy, 6 for 57 in the air. Wandell, 5 for 50. Theo Johnson, 3 for 30. Like I said, nobody scored, so nobody really had a big fantasy day. Tyrone Tracy is probably the most fantasy relevant asset in this offense last night. So overall, that's kind of the way that it is. Let's see. Clip says, what happened to Mooney? I don't think they really needed to rely on him in that one. Just not a good week. Spent too much time in Chicago and got the Bears curse. An Element says Monday Night Football, ? Yes, we will preview that game just a little bit. Obviously, we haven't seen it play, but tonight we do get the Bills-Jets. We get that matchup here in East Rutherford, New Jersey, with the Jets being the home team here. Overall, James Cook, he's questionable going into this game. I haven't heard anything about whether or not he's going to play. If you have James Cook, you've been waiting on James Cook, and you still have the ability to do so, make sure you pick up Ty Johnson. Make sure you pick up Ray Davis. Those are going to be guys that would get the majority of the snaps if James Cook is unable to go tonight. Khalil Shakir, he's been a guy who's been questionable all week. I don't necessarily expect him to play tonight. If he does, I don't expect a lot out of him, probably because this is a good defense against the Jets. I think this is really a game, too, where if you're looking for an underdog, the Jets right now, they are not the favorite. I think they can win this game. Teams typically, sports betting-wise, data-wise, when a team gets the interim head coach into the offense, calling the plays, whatever, they tend to rally around the new coach one time and usually win that first game. I think they've won it like 18 of the last 21 times when there's a new head coach in the building or an interim head coach. So data kind of favors the Jets winning this one just from that perspective. But who knows, man? It's going to be a good game, interesting game. I'd take the Jets to win this one at home, though, in this matchup. And hopefully we can get a good day out of some of the options that we wanted. Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, so on. They have now given up. Nathaniel Hackett will no longer be calling plays for the Jets. So that is a good thing for the Jets' offensive weapons in Breece Hall and what's his name? Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. So Element says, why is Devontae not targeting the Jets? I don't know, man. We don't know what's going on with Devontae at the moment. We'll see. It's still a play-by-play. I think every single week something changes with Devontae Adams, but there you have it, folks. We are at 56 minutes. What a job. Round of applause to you. Round of applause to me. Goddamn, we got this one done very efficiently. You love to see it. 1 hour in, 1 hour out. And that said, folks, if you did enjoy the live stream, you found some information in it actionable, entertaining, you just had fun hanging out in the chat with me, you just like hanging out with me, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. That way you don't miss any future live streams. I see Griffin and some of the other people say they don't see when the live streams happen. I'll tell you what, every Monday, every Friday, every Saturday, and every Sunday, there is a live stream. We stream 4 days a week over here on this channel. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, videos that are pre-recorded, but giving you the rankings, the waiver wires, all of that good stuff. Start sits of the week. But I do think if you are missing the live streams, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, I got you covered. That said, folks, I have nothing else for you guys today, so I will see you on our next episode. But until then, peace out.